So we continue to listen in on the dialogue between Job and his friends, and Zophar is the next one to have a go at Job. So let's listen to what he has to say and how Job begins to respond. Then Zophar the Naamathite replied, "Are all these words to go unanswered? Is this talker to be vindicated? Will your idle talk reduce others to silence? Will no one rebuke you when you mock? You say to God, my beliefs are flawless, and I am pure in your sight. Oh, how I wish that God would speak, that he would open his lips against you, and disclose to you the secrets of wisdom. For true wisdom has two sides. Know this, God has even forgotten some of your sin. Can you fathom the mysteries of God? Can you probe the limits of the Almighty?" Let's just pause there. Back in verse 4. Zophar is mocking Job for saying, my beliefs are flawless and I'm pure in your sight. And yet that's exactly what God has said to Satan about Job. So that just shows us how far Zophar is off the truth. But he's really giving Job a dressing down. Let's pick up as he goes on to say, they are higher than the heavens above. What can you do? They are deeper than the depths below. What can you know? Their measure is longer than the earth and wider than the sea. If he comes along and confines you in prison and convenes a court, who can oppose him? Surely he recognizes deceivers, and when he sees evil, does he not take note? God had taken note of righteousness too, and that's exactly why Job is in this situation at the moment. But the witless can no more become wise than a wild donkey's colt can be born human. Yet if you devote your heart to him and stretch out your hands to him, if you put away the sin that is in your hand and allow no evil to dwell in your tent, then, free of fault, you will lift up your face. You will stand firm and without fear. Repent, Job, confess your sin, and then you'll be restored. You will surely forget your trouble, recalling it only as waters gone by. Life will be brighter than noonday, and darkness will become like morning. You will be secure, because there is hope. You will look about you and take your rest in safety. You will lie down with no one to make you afraid, and many will court your favour. But the eyes of the wicked will fail, and escape will elude them. Their hope will become a dying gasp. It's the same thesis. Job, you're a sinner, God is righteous, and therefore you need to repent, and your misery will come to an end. How's Job going to reply to this latest attack? Then Job replied, doubtless you are the only people who matter, and wisdom will die with you. A bit sarcastic, isn't it? Clearly his three friends, he says, are the only wise people, and no one else knows anything, and when they're gone, wisdom will disappear. But I have a mind as well as you. I am not inferior to you. Who does not know all these things? I have become a laughingstock to my friends, though I called on God, and he answered. A mere laughingstock, though righteous and blameless. Same words that God used of Job at the beginning. Those who are at ease have contempt for misfortune as the fate of those whose feet are slipping. The tents of marauders are undisturbed, and those who provoke God are secure, those whom God has in his hand. But ask the animals and they will teach you, or the birds in the sky and they will tell you, or speak to the earth and it will teach you, or let the fish in the sea inform you. Which of all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? God has done this to Job, though righteous, and there are many others wicked who are getting on in life fine. In his hand is the life of every creature, and the breath of all mankind. Does not the ear test words as the tongue tastes food? Is not wisdom found among the aged? Does not long life bring understanding? To God belong wisdom and power. Counsel and understanding are his. What he tears down cannot be rebuilt. Those he imprisons cannot be released. If he holds back the waters, there is drought. If he lets them loose, they devastate the land. To him belongs strength and insight. Both deceived and deceiver are his. He leads rulers away stripped and makes fools of judges. He takes off the shackles put on by kings and ties a loincloth round their waist. He leads priests away stripped and overthrows officials long established. He silences the lips of trusted advisers and takes away the discernment of elders. He pours contempt on nobles and disarms the mighty. He reveals the deep things of darkness and brings utter darkness into the light. He makes nations great and destroys them. He enlarges nations and disperses them. He deprives the leaders of the earth of their reason. He makes them wander in a trackless waste. They grope in darkness with no light. He makes them stagger like drunkards. Now we're pausing here. Job is going to go on for another 2 chapters before he finishes part of the speech. But what's he saying in response to Zophar? Look, I agree with your thesis of God's sovereignty. I agree that nothing happens outside of God's plan. It's God who has caused what has happened to me to happen. I acknowledge that. But what Job is not willing to concede is that there's no particular sin he needs to repent. And this is what is so hard for Job. He was righteous and blameless. He did seek the Lord. He saw the Lord answer his prayers. And now he's facing this devastation and he just can't make it add up. And we need to be careful here, don't we, that both we understand how suffering works in this world, that it is not always the direct result of sin. Often it isn't the result of our sin as individuals. It's because we live in a broken world that's out of kilter, and all things happen according to the hand of a sovereign God. And so yes, God has allowed the circumstances we find ourselves in, and there's not a direct explanation. It's not because we did A that B has happened. But that doesn't mean we then reject the idea that God is sovereign, and Job is more than happy to acknowledge that is the case. Because even the animal kingdom know this, that God's in control. We're not rejecting God's sovereignty in all of these things. What Job is struggling with is God's sovereignty and the circumstances he's living with. How can it be like this if God is sovereign? As we're going to see tomorrow, again he comes back to the issue of how can I engage with God over these things? Just seems very unfair. Now Job is kicking back in this section against his friends and just saying to them, you think you've got it all sorted, you think you've got all the wisdom in the world, and you're coming to counsel me as someone who doesn't understand. I've got a mind too. I'm as wise as you are. And there is a challenge here, isn't it, as to how we speak to others and how we perceive our own wisdom, and how much we declare and how much we ponder. It's very easy to tell truths to people, and sometimes we need to reflect with them and query and question things. And it's interesting, isn't it, that so much of Jesus in the New Testament is dialogue. People ask questions, he asks questions back, they're exploring issues, as well as clearly lots of teaching from Jesus as well, but so much of it is in the form of questions. And when we're engaging with those, particularly who are suffering, we need to be very careful about declaring what we know to be true, when probably the person we're speaking to may well believe those same things, but is struggling to work them out in practice and to allow time for questions to be asked, where there won't be easy answers, as we're going to find through the book of Job, where we can't square the circle, where we can't explain the situation, and we at times can only just share the sense of query or frustration or unfairness even of what seems to be the situation. Now, there are truths that we can point to and go to, and we will work through, and this is where the gospel comes in. But we need to be careful how quickly we apply those and where we get to. Now we're going to listen to a song now, Tell Out My Soul, where based on Mary's words at the birth of Jesus, where she is recognising too God's sovereignty and the raising and humbling of powers, as Job has just acknowledged. But in Mary's song there's a different edge. There's an acknowledgement that God is the one who lifts the humble. God is the one who loves the weak and the weary. And yet that's not what Job is feeling at this moment, and yet we know this is true of our God, and that's difficult when we don't feel what we believe to be true. But let's listen to the words of the song and reflect on these things as we seek to ponder out these problems together.